Hello, everybody, and welcome for the first edition of the College Football Betting Breakdown Show presented by Scores and Odds. I'm going to be your host today, Sean PSU Fans 2 Newsham. Joining me is going to be my co-host for the day, Alex Fearmyturtle Hardin. Alex, week 0 is upon us. How excited are you to get started here and get the first week of college football going?
Yeah, we get a nice little appetizer. I think we're going to run through like 7 games. So typically, I think this show is going to be a bit of like a first look show earlier in the week, kind of talking about maybe some things that happened last week, look ahead at the games, some early leans, what we see from a sides and total perspective. So it should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, for sure. And for those of you that are not familiar with Alex and I, we are the two of the leading players in the DFS industry in terms of college football. We've been doing it for about a decade now. We both are well established within the DFS industry in regards to college football play and how to sort of construct lineups. So we're going to be here hopefully weekly with you guys to go over a few games. Like Alex said, this week there's 7 games on the slate that have lines up as of now. So we're going to do those games. Going forward, we're probably going to pick and choose some games that we like each week. For you guys that are new, make sure you guys go to Scores and Odds to check out all the spreads. It's a good spot to go find lines and different shops for stuff. If you go on here to the NCAA column and you go down to lines, you can sit here and you can see what sites have the best lines. So like, as you can see here, the Northwestern game compared to DraftKings and FanDuel and BetMGM, you might see different lines. Like you see 3 different lines here. So you can go choose what has the best line. That's one of the biggest ways to go and bet against things is by using this. So make sure you use Scores and Odds to go do that. We have experts that throw up picks each and every week. Alex and I will be providing some along with other people as well. So it's a great shop to go to for you guys to learn and get some good information in regards to the college football season. All right, let's get started here, Alex. We're going to start with the first game on the slate. We have Northwestern against Nebraska. Nebraska is changing their offense quite a bit. They brought in Mark Whipple, who was most recently at Pittsburgh. So this offense should change from a more rush-heavy offense into more of what we saw from Pittsburgh last year, which is a more pass-happy offense. So we have a line of around 12.5 to 13.5, depending on the site, and a total around 50. So that's what we're looking at to start. So what's your first thoughts here looking at this game?
Yeah, it's a game I'm not super interested in from a betting perspective. It is a game that's being played in Ireland. I know, like anecdotally, we'll see some of those overseas games get kind of ugly. Especially like if the field conditions are not great, assuming they're playing on grass there. So, yeah, I'm excited to see this from just like a Nebraska offense perspective is my biggest takeaway, but don't really show any kind of extreme value from a betting perspective. And I guess it's probably a good time to go into like, I think of sides and totals. I'm pretty selective. I take pretty analytic heavy approach and then try to layer some context on top of that. Whereas you might be, Sean, more of like a feel, like trust your eyes, what you see in the game type of person. So, I mean, I think college football is a great sport for that because you have to definitely marry the numbers and kind of the context since there's such a wide gap in like opponents and there's so many variables at play and such small samples. So college football is definitely really interesting that from that perspective. But in terms of this game, I don't have any strong plays, but excited to see the Nebraska offense.
Yeah, for me, I definitely will take more of an eyes approach on some things. We've talked about before, like last year, a lot of my movements and a lot of the things I do in regards to sides and totals is dependent on injury news and sort of what we're seeing. If we see some quarterbacks that are going to be out or receivers that might be banged up, could lead me to make moves that I wouldn't have otherwise made. I definitely will look at the analytics and the sort of background behind some of the games and see what we're doing. Like you said, I'm very interested to see what we get out of Nebraska. They are going to run a completely different offense. The first time in what feels like 15 years that Adrian Martinez is not starting for Nebraska. So that's going to be something new to sort of look at. But they brought in Casey Thompson, transfer from Texas. It's going to be interesting to see how he can handle this offense and how he's going to be in the pass game. I think he's going to struggle more so than what we saw out of Kenny Pickett because obviously Kenny Pickett's a much more established passer of the ball than Casey Thompson. So it'll be interesting to see how he comes in and handles things here. As you said, the game's in Ireland, so we have a neutral field, but typically I feel like those games are going to be a bit more sort of chaotic because teams are out of rhythm, especially first game of the year. Teams have no rhythm. They're just going over to Ireland. No one's going to be comfortable. I will say I probably would prefer Nebraska of the two sides here. I don't really have tons of strong leans in week one. The reason I would go with Northwestern is Nebraska team is completely using a new style of offense. I'm not sure how some of these players are going to translate from the offense that was previously ran at Nebraska into what is currently being ran there. Because what we see with sort of offensive overhauls like that is sometimes it takes a couple years because you have to bring in players that fit the system more so. And I'm just not sure what we're going to have this year at Nebraska. All right, next game on the slate, we have historically a big powerhouse in Yukon against Utah State here. As you guys see, Utah State is minus 27.5, just under a 4-touchdown spread here on pretty much every book. So I think that Yukon is coming into this game. They have lost Cam Ross, who's their leading receiver and a guy that they really rely on. Utah State does lose some guys, but they return Logan Bonner. There shouldn't be a quarterback controversy as of now. They do have some other guys that came in that could play some, but I don't think it's going to happen now. They return Calvin Tyler. They return McGriff as well at receiver. They bring in Brian Cobbs, one of your boys from Nebraska or from Maryland. So they have some talent there, whereas Yukon I just think is going to struggle. I don't love either side per se. The total and the spread is pretty high. The spread's 27.5. That's a bit much for me really to go on either side here. The total at 60, it's one of those things like Yukon could really struggle to score. If Yukon can't score more than a touchdown, it's going to be really difficult for Utah State to get there alone in terms of the total. What is your thoughts here on this game?
Yukon plus 27.5 is actually my favorite side of the week.
There you go.
So I just think it's too many points. I have it closer to 24, showing like around a 6% edge in terms of taking Yukon in the points. Really, I think it's about just the change of regime. They bring in Jim Mora. Like it's not going to be. It's a hire that's going to like raise the floor of the program. They're not going to be great. They're obviously really bad, but I think Utah State losing their wide receiver room effectively outside of McGriff is going to be impactful. Like Bonner is not going to pick up where he left off last year, in my opinion, without those weapons like Devin Tompkins, Brandon Bowling, those types. So that'll be interesting to see. It's just 27's too many points for me. I like Yukon.
Look at you calling Brandon Bowling a weapon.
Yeah, I know. Well, I mean, I had to like change my opinion on him at some point when he kept on like catching like 25-yard passes all season.
You did. Yeah. Something else to note on Scores and Odds that you guys should definitely be able to take a look at. You see the line movement. There's a tab here that shows the line movement from what we've been at. As you see, there really hasn't been much in this game. It's been pretty stable at 27.5. The total's been right around 60. We haven't seen many moves. That's something I would definitely use as the season progresses with different games to see what makes sense and if anything stands out to you from a line movement perspective as well.
Yeah. Right, also, I one of my favorite total plays is actually the under in this game as well. So just going along the lines of Utah State's offense struggling a little bit without the wide receiver weapons. So
yeah, and for what it's worth, I probably would lean towards the under as well here. Yukon offense we know is probably going to be pretty dire here. It's probably not going to be very strong. And Utah State did lose their receivers, especially they lost their big play threat. Tompkins was a guy that just took the top off last year. So when you got a guy that's going out there and just ripping 60, 70-yard touchdown catches, really adds a lot of points to the game because they're scoring within 10 seconds. And that happened quite frequently last year with Tompkins. And like McGriff and Brian Cobbs are not those receivers. Like they're not going to go out there and just rip 80-yard touchdowns off repeatedly. So I definitely agree with that as well. All right, moving on to the Wyoming-Illinois game. As you see here, the total is relatively low, only at 46 points. We see the line is right around 11 points. What's your thoughts here with the Wyoming and Illinois game?
Yeah, I really have no interest in side or total in this game. Earlier in the summer, I wrote up a week one piece and I had the over in this game, just thinking like both of these defenses are going to take a step back, which I still think is true. However, I don't think the offenses from either side are going to be great, especially Wyoming. They lost a lot of pieces and weapons. They had a little bit of an exodus through the transfer portal. So I just think this is a pretty ugly game. And I really have no interest. second year for Bielema at Illinois. They have a new offensive coordinator. They actually got the UTSA offensive coordinator who ran a pretty interesting like run heavy game. So they might be a little bit better as the season goes on offensively, but this game's a pass for me.
Yeah, I agree. There's not really tons I like on either side. Illinois does return Chase Brown. I think that he's a pretty strong running back. They're going to get some carries there. We watched Illinois enough last year. They struggled to move the ball some games, and Wyoming is not really going to be looking to play a super exciting game either. So I think that the under, if anything here, as we see, the total has moved up 2 points though. So like if you do want to go the under, you do get a couple more points here than what you would have earlier in the year. So it's something where I probably would stay away from this game. There's not tons I'm interested in this game as well. A quick note for you guys that there are quite a few FCS games and games where like Florida State and Duquesne. We don't have lines for them. I don't know when they're going to come up, so we aren't going to talk about them here today because we just don't have much data to go on them. The one thing I will note is the Austin Peay Western Kentucky game. Both of those teams play very, very fast. I think there could be a lot of scores in that game, and the total could come in a little bit lower than what you would think. So I definitely like that, depending on what comes out for that. What do you think that the line should be in terms of the total in the Austin Peay Western Kentucky game, Alex?
I mean, I was thinking it could be around 70, but yeah, I really don't know. Give or take 5
points. 72.
Yeah.
So if you get a total in that game that comes in at like, let's say 65 or 66, I definitely like the over. So that's just something to keep an eye on. All right, moving over to Charlotte and Florida Atlantic. Charlotte returns quarterback Chris Reynolds. He has been there forever, it feels like. But the big difference is with Reynolds this year, he was banged up at the end of last year. His ankle was pretty messed up for the second half of last year, which really impacted their offense and what they did. So I think getting Reynolds back and getting a healthy Chris Reynolds back is going to be a good thing for Charlotte. Then on the FAU side of the ball, they're returning N'Kosi Perry. They have some very strong running backs with Johnny Ford, Larry McCammon. They have some really talented running backs. So I think we know what they're going to do as well. But both teams return a decent amount of skill position players. So what's your thoughts here with Charlotte versus Florida Atlantic?
Yeah, I think the side and total are accurate. I don't have anything. I have enough on Chris Reynolds rushing props already to have a vested interest in this game. So that's it for me.
Yeah, bonus info for people over at Scores or over at Prize Picks. The Chris Reynolds rushing total started at 6.5 this week. Alex was really a big fan of that. I think it's doubled to like 12.5, which is probably still pretty
15 and a half this morning.
That moved. Last time you and I talked was 12.5. Yeah. So that's still a pretty favorable number. The one thing I will note on this game, I like Alex said, there's not tons I like here, but we've seen the Florida Atlantic line move from 5.5 to over a touchdown. So it definitely eclipsed a couple of those numbers that are very important numbers. So I definitely think that we have seen quite a bit of a movement here to Florida Atlantic side in comparison to Charlotte here. All right, next game we have the North Texas Mean Green versus UTEP. We do see Frank Harris return here for UTEP. He's been there forever as well. What is your thoughts here in this game?
Despite the fact that North Texas plays extremely fast, I like the under in this one. Not interested in a side, but definitely I'll have a little bit on the under 55. So last year, UTEP is a team that's terrible offensively, but they're solid defensively, and they're going to be run heavy. And I think North Texas is bad enough defensively that they'll be able to move the ball a little bit and chew up clock. I just think it's going to be an ugly game without a ton of plays ran. And so I kind of formed that opinion. Then I was curious to see what happened last year. They played, it was 20-17. And North Texas have been playing some pretty high scoring games. So I think it's a situation where people are not going to be rushing to bet the under on a North Texas game. So I don't think we see drastic line moves. So, I mean, yeah, I'll just take the under in this game and hope that Utah State kind of just snuffs them out.
Yeah, luckily for us here, we get the only player in college football, well, I guess the only quarterback in college football that is going to start that is probably in pretty close to our age bracket, Alex, with I think Austin Uni was the winner of the North Texas quarterback battle, and I believe he's around 30 years old now. He was someone that was in baseball farm system for years, and he is now being established. I would agree. I don't really have A side I love here either. I think the under is probably the best bet of the options. Like you said, this was sort of a gross game last year. And I think that we could see a similar sort of impact on this one. All right, moving to the next game, we have Nevada against New Mexico State. Nevada has had a lot of issues off the field. We did a breakdown for our DFS purposes, and we did like a returning players spot for Nevada. And there was like one guy. Everybody else has either left or transferred. New coaching staff has moved out. As you guys see here, this opened up at Nevada minus 14.5, and it has already moved to -9. The reason for that is because, well, the reason it opened at 14.5 is because New Mexico State is one of the worst teams in the country last year. The reason it has closed is because Nevada has literally lost everyone, including their coaching staff for the most part. I know earlier, about a couple weeks ago or months ago, this was one of your favorite lines of the week. So why don't you talk a little bit about New Mexico State here?
Yeah, when it was at 13.5, but that was one of the 3 plays that I wrote up on the New Mexico State side, just there it being too many points. And now that it's moved to 9, it's to the point now where I wouldn't touch it, wouldn't add on anymore, obviously. And my numbers are now showing a slight edge on betting Nevada -9, but I wouldn't do that with all the question marks. So if you didn't have anything on earlier, it'd be a pass for me, and just probably don't watch this game because it's not going to be pretty. But I will say with New Mexico State, they hired Jerry Kill. It's another hire similar to like the Jim Mora one, where it's something where it raises the floor of your program. New Mexico State's been literally like the worst team in college football. And Jerry Kill in year 1, like he's going to establish identity. They're going to run a lot. He brought in a top 90 recruiting class, which for him, like in that school, is quite amazing. So I think they're a team that can steadily improve over the season. They're still going to be terrible, but so is Nevada. And I think this game probably just plays a bit closer. But yeah, do yourself a favor. Don't watch this game.
Yeah, I tend to agree. So, Alex, you just talked about, you wrote up a couple months ago on Scores and Odds. What were the 3 bets and games that you wrote up? And then what have the lines moved to since you wrote them up?
Yukon plus 27, that stayed the same. The Illinois, Wyoming over 46, that's actually come down 2 points. So I had a misread on that, obviously, but I think I made up for it with taking New Mexico State in 13.5, and that's already moved 4.5 points. So that was a pretty solid one to lock in early.
Yeah, definitely. So like I said, guys, make sure you guys check out Scores and Odds. We'll be having posts up there along with some other people as well. We'll be up there every week. All right, last game of the night, we have Vanderbilt traveling to Hawaii. It's a game where we see the line around a touchdown, just under. As we see, it's moved a little bit. Total's been pretty stable at 55.5 as well. I would like to get back to the old days where we watch Hawaii come out there and just showcase an offense and get lit up on defense. To me, that is fun. I want to get back to that times. We have a lot of question marks over who will be starting at quarterback for Hawaii. That's going to be a question mark as well. So what's your thoughts here in the last game of the night?
Yeah, it should be exciting. I'm not a huge fan of Vanderbilt. They're starting Mike Wright, which I think is the right decision. He has more of an upside long term. And actually, Ken Seals was listed as the 3rd quarterback. And I think probably something, so he's not like looking over Wright's shoulder the whole season. So it looks like they're committing to Mike Wright. At quarterback, they're going to lead like a rush heavy attack with a lot of misdirection. But to me, it's a really tough travel spot for them going to Hawaii. And the Hawaii like programs revitalized with bringing in Timmy Chang as their head coach, who's been offensive assistant with Nevada the last few years, very productive offense. They brought in Eastern Washington's offensive coordinator, very productive offense at the FCS level. So I'm really intrigued with Hawaii. I think what I would do here, I would just take a small play on the Hawaii money line and just kind of embrace that variance and take a position that has a little bit more upside than taking Hawaii in the points against an SEC team. So that would be my lean, is a small Hawaii money line play. What do you think about this game?
No, I tend to agree. That's what I was going to say as well. The Hawaii money line seems to be a good option. I mean, we know Vanderbilt's very poor. Hawaii, the main issue they've had over the last couple of years, their offense has been very, very dull. Well, I guess last year, I guess before that, it was still okay. But it's very difficult to travel to Hawaii and play, especially a late night game like this. Like this game for Vanderbilt is a 1:30 a.m. kickoff time. Like that is a very difficult situation to get to. Obviously, it's a bit easier at this time of the season because you're playing game one, like they can go over there a lot earlier, get accustomed to it. But like you're talking a 1:30 a.m. kickoff time for Vanderbilt. It's very difficult to go with. With legend Timmy Chang coming back, I definitely think that Hawaii money line around plus 200 is a good dart to throw here. All right, guys, that's going to wrap it up for us for week 0. We'll be back next week for week 1. When luckily, Alex, I mean, I know the topic is going to be the Penn State Nittany Lions and how they should be a 28-point favorite at Purdue. So I'm looking forward to discussing the Penn State game with you. We will be back here next week for everyone. Good luck to you guys out there betting in week 0. We will see you guys next week.
Let's go Huskies.